Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Not That Bad Live. We are live and in living color. Let's see how long it takes for us to fuck this up. Ladies and gentlemen, this is so exciting. We got some exciting guests. We're talking about a fun movie today. But first, let's get started with our normal introductions. My name is Connor, a.k.a. German Munster, and I am joined by my illustrious co-host, Mr. Gabe Tice. Gabe, how are you doing this evening?
No.
Well,
I'm not playing this game. Not after German Munster. Munster.
Luckily, if Gabe doesn't want to play the game, we got two other people who will want to play the game, and those people are our friends from Flopbuster. We have Tony Crespo and other Gabe, Gabriel Tornero. Folks, how are you guys doing today?
I'm good. How about you, Gabe? You doing? He always does this. He does this where he doesn't go first, and it's awkward.
That's why I didn't specify one of you. I wanted a fight early. So
yeah. I'm doing great.
I'm doing great as well. I always I always want Tony to go first. If anything, I'm a gentleman, so ladies go first.
Well, there you go. Chivalry is not dead, ladies and gentlemen. And while we are observing the ongoing love story of Tony and other Gabe, we also will be talking about what has been described as the greatest love story ever told by the terrible trailer for this movie. Folks, we are talking about Rob Zombie's The Munsters, released in 2022, straight to Netflix and DVD. This was written and directed by Rob Zombie, bit of a departure from what we're used to. And it's from the studio who brought us some incredible pieces of work, such as Doom Annihilation, Cult, and Curse of Chucky, and American Pie Presents Girls Rules.
And Kindergarten Cop 2.
Yes. Also,
Curse of Chucky is a fine piece of entertainment. So let's caution ourselves.
Okay, so let me trade out
against Curse of Chucky.
Yeah, let me trade out Curse of Chucky and put in the Scorpion King 4 because they also did that.
Also, let's put some respect on the girls' rule. American Girls Rule. All right, let's put some respect on that.
Hey, maybe we got some contenders for Not That Bad in there. But this movie is sort of along the lines of those films that we've seen from Universal 1440. Not beloved by everybody that's seen it. We got a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 36% audience score and a 2.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Possibly the worst trailer of all time to introduce us to this movie. Gabe from Not That Bad.
Let's step back and really put this into perspective. What the lead up to this movie was.
Yeah, I guess that
Rob. Yeah, we hear that Rob Zombie is going to finally make a movie adaptation of The Munsters, which was a dream project for his. He's always famously been a huge fan. I mean, his biggest song, at least as a solo artist, is a reference to The Munsters, Dragula. So his career is in an interesting place. 31 and 3 from Hell kind of alienate everybody except his most diehard fans. And even diehard fans, for me, were starting to get worried about it, the state of his film career, because, he had just been taking heat for so long at that point, ever since arguably, the first Halloween remake. So then it's announced he's doing The Munsters. He's casting all of his friends. He's casting Cherry Moon Zombie. And there's nothing, at least from what I heard, but dread and terror at this. Everybody thought he was going to do an R-rated. Herman Munster was going to be a white trash hillbilly.
With a beard.
But I want to turn it over to our guests here, because I know you both have a different relationship with Rob's movies. So let's see, what do you guys feel while we're leading up to The Munsters? How do you feel? Are you excited about Rob doing this project? Are you the opposite of excited, as a lot of people were? Let's start with Tony and keeping in tradition. Tony,
Okay.
what are your thoughts?
Okay. Well, yeah. It's funny because we covered the trailers on Flopbuster leading up to it, and I think initially when it was announced, they were pretty much getting ready to shoot. Me and Gabe were in agreement on that we thought he was the perfect guy for a Munsters movie. At that time, though, a lot of the rumors out were that it was a $40 million production and it was going to theaters and Peacock at the same time. So that's the only thing we had to go off of. There was no there was nothing mentioning Universal 1440 at the time. It was just that Rob Zombie's doing it with Peacock and it might go in theaters. And Sherry Moon Zombie is going to play Lily Munster. So I think we were both like, okay, yeah, that sounds cool. I like the Munsters. I like the original movie, Munster Go Home, and Here Come the Munsters from the 90s. And Gabe, I think, I don't know, like you were just excited that it was a Rob Zombie movie.
I was, because I didn't have any like preconceived notions of the Munsters. I didn't watch them growing up, the TV show or the movies, but you get Rob Zombie's name attached to something and my ears perk up. Like I get excited. I'm going to keep it PG here. And so like, I just, got really, really excited about this. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that like you mentioned it's after 3 from Hell and 31, it's sort of like, I couldn't defend them as much as I wanted to. It was just like, it was hard to defend Rob Zombie. So I was like, all right, this is the movie. It's a passion project. He loves them. Like I remember watching MTV Cribs and his house was like a lot of Munster stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'm excited. It's his passion project. Let's get this done. And, and here we are a year later talking about it.
On a show called Not That Bad. So that shows you how that went partially. Now, this movie gets the worst trailer. And I'm really suspicious of the circumstances of how that trailer was assembled and released, because I can't believe that would be sanctioned by anything resembling a major production company. It does not reflect the film in any way. The audio has not been mixed. The color grading is far from over. But at the same time, there was a previous teaser that showed all the principal actors in their wardrobe. That looked promising, where they actually recreate the famous intro. Munsters intro. You get to see Jeff Daniel Phillips, who this is, I guess he was the lead in 31. I was about to say this is the first time he's led a Rob Zombie movie. He's been in every Rob Zombie movie since Halloween 2, where he's in 2 roles. One of which is obvious. The other one might be a little Easter egg. Find Jeff Daniels Phillips' second role in Halloween 2. And then you get Daniel Roebuck, who had also worked with Rob before. And I would say he's the casting announcement that people actually got excited about from the get-go. Munsters fans were actually applauding that decision. And nobody wanted to give Sherry the benefit of the doubt. And Jeff Daniels was a wait-and-see type of situation. But to address those rumors, no, this was not a $40 million movie.
Yes.
Take 1 0 off that. Right. I think it's $4 million.
Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, which was a bigger budget than Rob had been working with. I mean, let's be real, right?
From what I know, I believe all Universal 1440, they have like a pretty standard like $5 million budget for all those movies. I think called the Chucky. What's the other one? Curse the Chucky. I think all those movies are around like $5 million productions. And then they also have to shoot them in like other countries. Like I forget which one that was used for this, but I went down a rabbit hole. Somebody had made a video about all those movies, and they all shoot in like the same areas. Man, I'm blanking on which country they shoot in.
I think this was Prague. This one was Prague.
Yeah, it might have been Prague. I thought I might have heard something about some of the scenes being in Budapest, but
that's
they. It's weird because Rob's budgets have gotten smaller and smaller over time as he's made more movies. Some of the projects that he really had a passion about getting made, like he wanted to make one about Groucho Marx. He wanted to make one like a hockey movie. But
Broad Street Bullies.
Broad Street Bullies. He didn't get a chance to do either of those. Instead, he had to crowdfund Hit 31, which had a budget of 1.5 million, and then the budget for 3 from Hell was right around there. he does a good job, I think, of not making it seem like he doesn't have a lot of money. You know, when you watch 31, like, yeah, it's in one place, but he lights it really well, and he tries to, you know, throw makeup effects and such in there that kind of broadens it up. And we'll see if that holds true for this film as well. Yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation. Gabe from Not That Bad, is there anything else you wanted to discuss about the ins and outs before we get into our feelings about things regarding the Munsters?
I think we should also set the stage of what the discourse is like around this movie when it comes out finally on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I want this to be measured because I believe that this is the most polarizing movie Rob has done in a long time, in that you can actually parse through the noise of bitching from his haters.
Yeah.
And you did see genuine support for this movie. Sometimes it was in the vein of, oh, turn your brain off and enjoy it, kind of patronizing stuff like that. Other people, some lone voices, were trying to champion what he had accomplished here. It wasn't normally coming from Munsters fans. It was normally coming from Rob Zombie fans or anybody who just wanted to see this kind of really fun, psychedelic Halloween special that he basically put together. I mean, Munsters as a property is pretty old. I don't know anybody who grew up with the Munsters who's even really paying attention to this movie coming out. I mean,
yeah, but no, I was always Adam's Family guy. But I've seen a handful of the Munsters episodes. I've seen like all the movies. Like I've seen the original and the straight to video once. I went down like I think like 4 or 5 years ago. I watched like the Christmas special. They had some stuff like the 80s stuff, but I really did enjoy Here Come the Munsters. I felt like that was as close to the 60s version that I had seen out of the stuff I did watch.
I agree.
Yeah. I don't want to say that there's not still affection for the Munsters, but it's not like a Halloween situation where you have this rabid, diehard fan base that is going to be extremely opinionated and chronically online about the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I don't know. I guess to set the stage for all of us, let's jump into that first time we watched this movie, the before and after. I want to turn it over to my co-host. You pop in the Munsters, Connor. What was that experience like? And has your feelings about the movie changed since?
Well, let me set the stage a little bit about myself. I'll do it very quickly. I actually had seen every episode of the Munsters television show before this. I was a big fan of it. In fact, in high school, my wife and I skipped a school dance to watch the Munsters. So I had been watching it for years. I got it on DVD when I was like 8, maybe 10 years old at Christmas. Loved the Munsters as a kid. So popping it in, I had high expectations until that trailer came out. When it came out, I was just like, please God, let it be better than what this makes it look like. So I will be honest. I did lower my expectations from where they were, which were sky high. And I put it in. I'm one of the ones who got the Blu-ray. I did not wait for the Netflix release. I didn't want to stream it. Popped in the Blu-ray. I had a fantastic time watching the movie. And I suppose by the end of this episode, we'll see if that has changed, because I did rewatch it for the show. But I had seen it 2 other times than my initial watch, just to kind of nail that down. And before we get back to my co-host, I want to throw it to other Gabe first, actually, here. What were your reactions like when you checked out the Munsters for the first time?
So there's certain movies that and Tony knows this and he hates this about me, that I automatically elevate to like the greatest movie of all time, right?
Yeah.
Transformers being one of the franchises, TMNT another one, and Rob Zombie I always like elevated sight unseen, right? So I bought the Munsters without even watching it. Like I bought I bought the Blu-ray. But I did wait for it to come out on Netflix. I was like, it's whatever, collector's edition. I watched it on Netflix. And I could say that I didn't rewatch it. The DVD is still in its cellophane in my shelf. Because I didn't watch it until this. I didn't watch it until this morning again. So it's been like about a year since I saw the Munsters from the original time. but yeah, so it was still exciting. I mean, I had fun. I had a fun time with it originally. So I'm not saying it, it's bad, but by no means.
Just haven't picked it up again.
Just haven't picked it up again. I've watched so many movies over the course of the past year that it's hard for me to sometimes rewatch things.
Yeah, man, I see you post about the stuff you see. I'm like, man, there's no chance I have to catch up to this guy. I wish I had the dedication to watch that many movies, because that's what this is all about. That's what our community is all about. And I have definitely fallen behind. So I envy you a little bit there.
Don't envy me too much, because when I'm watching movies, I'm not getting paid. I'm at home.
Well, that's very true. It's very, very true. I'll throw it to Tony here. Initial reactions upon seeing The Munsters, and have you gotten a chance to watch it again since your first viewing?
Yeah, well, I watched it. I streamed it when it first came out, and since then we bought it. But like Gabe, it was just sitting in plastic. I think we bought it because we saw it at Walmart for like $10.
Oh, cool.
Being Victoria, so we were just like, we'll have it. There's supposed to be some cool documentary on there about how he made the movie. But going into, I didn't know what to think, because the trailers I thought were bad, and I didn't really blame the movie or Rob. They were clearly like terribly edited. The audio wasn't mixed right. It was those were a whole other thing. But when it came to the movie itself, we put it on, and are we giving like our first reactions right now?
Yeah, just like your first thoughts upon watching it the first time. Yeah.
First time watching it was overall like a mixed bag. It wasn't like this train wreck people were expecting it to be. It was about what I expected from like a Universal 1440 title. A little better though, because Rob really shoots this like this candy-colored cartoon. It looks really cool. There's some great cinematography in there. And Daniel Roebuck is Grandpa, or the Count, was perfectly cast. Those were my initial reactions coming out of it. And then I guess I'll dive into the other stuff once we get down there. But overall, I was like dead in the center, where I thought it was pretty fun, but not what I would want personally. Like if he had been playing with a bigger budget with more characters, I think I'd like it a bit more.
And we've gone back around to Gabe from Not That Bad. What were your initial reactions, man who posed the question?
It was a time when I was nervous to finally be sitting down to watch it. Some part of me wanted to skip it, to just be happy for Rob that he got to make a Munsters movie, and just to not have the chance to stain, I guess, my opinion of where his career was at, because there are those movies that really start to either sour you or distance you from an idol or somebody that we really look up to. And not to make Rob out to be that sacred cow that can do no wrong. I mean, he hadn't delivered things that I personally loved for the last few projects, but the way that people were telling me that this was embarrassing, that it was humiliating, that Jeremy Johns, who I normally like, missed the mark so completely in retrospect when talking about this movie. And going back to the analysis of this film, it was really directed at the fact that Rob carried so much of himself over to the Munsters. Even though he didn't radically alter the DNA, he cast his colleagues, who I'm sure he's personally friendly with, because he is a guy who likes to create that social environment with the people he works with. But he's making this more about a tribute to the 60s and to psychedelia, and it has like the banner of being a Munsters movie, but he still allowed himself to actually make this a vehicle for his own passions, his own sensibilities, and in a way that's what he did with Halloween, and we know how that turned out for fans. So I watch it, not to ramble on too much, I watch it kind of dreading it. If it had been passable, I would have considered it a win for Rob and for this whole ordeal. But by the end of it, I, for the first time, really felt that I had watched a different movie than the critics or the naysayers. Like with all of his other contentious movies, I understand the criticism. I'm not blind to that, but I really couldn't understand especially the animosity being directed at this movie. And I was definitely in the camp of people who thought that he was really chasing after a very special, charming kind of quality that he totally nailed. It's not a perfect Munsters movie. It's not a perfect movie. It is this Halloween season delight, right? It's totally something to have on at a Halloween party. It's something to, add to a Halloween movie marathon. It's about the season and the atmosphere of the. It's about the charm of the season more than anything else. And for whatever reason, people just didn't want to grapple with that. At least I felt at the time. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to rewatch it because I was going to watch it today. Then we had to move the live stream to today. So my apologies if I end up hating it on a rewatch. I will let everybody know that I've eaten my words. But those are initial reactions. And I really want to start posing the question of, was Rob Zombie the guy to make the Munsters? Now that we've all seen the final product, was that a good match? Because I can say, even though I love his Halloween movies, he was not the guy to do Halloween. Somebody's got to go first.
So
I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
So I think he was, and I want to piggyback a little bit off what you just said, because people hired their colleagues. People give him such a hard time for hiring his wife, his friends, and all that. But Martin Scorsese does the same thing. Tarantino does the same thing. Every director likes to work with a group of people that they know that they work well with. And why is it Rob Zombie? Everybody just jumps on him because he's working with the same people.
Because horror fans don't watch real movies.
Well, and the other thing too is that, and there's,
I'm sorry, it's
Tony coming in with the heat.
It's the truth. It's the truth. Have you ever talked to a horror fan and asked them, "Oh, have you seen this film or that film?" I'll wait for streaming, or I won't watch it at all. That's the answer that they give. So when they go, "Oh, Rob just works with the same people," it's just like, no shit. Cassavetes used his wife in every movie. like it's not that big of a deal. That's like the least offensive thing about Rob's. Like, not even that I dislike all his movies, but like when it comes to Rob, he has a very divisive style, right? And him using the same actors shouldn't even be a part of the conversation. That's not even a thing. Like, it always bugs me whenever I hear horror fans talk about that, because they cry about the Halloween movies, and that's their whole argument. I don't know. I agree with you, Gabe.
It's weird though, because James Gunn is dealing with the same thing now. Now that he's at the helm of a major brand, the fact that he cast his wife, she's been a professional actress for decades, long before she got married to him, and nobody had a problem with her performances in anything until I guess they made the connection that she was romantically involved with. I mean, God damn it, the Coen brothers. Can Joel Coen not hire Frances McDormand for Fargo according to these rules? And I get that Sherry Moon Zombie isn't exactly Frances McDormand, but there's a way that he likes to use her that can be very effective. And that's something I'm going to say about the performances all across the board. They weren't perfectly cast in a one-to-one way from the TV show to this film. Jeff Daniel Phillips could not be like Fred Gwynn any more than he is. But for the version of Herman Munster that Rob is creating and fleshing out here, not only does Jeff Daniel Phillips nail it, in a way he creates this kind of complementary character to that more iconic version that we all know, but this is something almost like a companion piece in a way, because it's literally an origin story. Oh my God, it's exactly what he did with Halloween.
Well, you said something that I think is interesting there, because the horror audience as a whole thought he is not the right guy to do Halloween, and they probably also think he's not the right guy to do the Munsters. But I think the cast of this, the style of this, as well as the cast and style of the Halloween movies, to a certain extent, there's some misses on both sides. I think it's proof that he's the perfect guy to do whatever movie you want him to do. He's just not the perfect guy to make the movie that everybody wants him to make. I think when you look at his movies, and this is why I think James Gunn is an example of a guy who gets some hate the same way that Rob does, not quite at that level, but it's when you sort of break the mold a little bit. When you look at a guy like Martin Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino, they make movies that appeal to a broad range of people, and they very much fit a mold of movies that they make. And if they are already appealing to those people to begin with, they're going to continue to do that. Rob's not a guy who does that. And James Gunn is dealing with comic books. So when you're dealing in the world of comic books or horror, it's a little bit hard to appease all of the geeks out there who are just going to jump on every little thing that you do. But highlighting the cast there, I guess that's where I kind of want to jump to everybody's opinions here. The cast is sort of you can cast a broad net there. You go from Sherry to Jeff to Daniel Roebuck to all of these different people. But I want to start with Sherry because she is a huge point of contention for a lot of people in the world of horror, not just who've seen all of his films, but if you've seen one of his films, you probably have an opinion on Sherry Moon Zombie. I want to start with you here, Tony. Do you think this was a role that Sherry should have been playing? Or do you think that maybe he should have delegated, maybe he should have listened to the critics and moved away from her in this particular case?
No, I think Sherry looked. I mean, from the picture, she was looking great in the movie already. But I think she plays it well. I think she's a very serviceable Lily Munster. I don't really have strong opinions about that character in general. Like again, like to me, It's just like if it was the Addams Family, right? I'm like, oh, I need somebody that's like really, really good, and like I feel like you really need that gravitas for Morticia to really balance out that comedy. With Lily Munster, I don't know. Like I like what I've seen from the show. I like the straight-to-video movies. I thought she was perfectly fine here. I thought she played off well with the cast. I understand that horror fans just like, they hate everything, but
it's fair point.
I thought that she worked here, and I think casting her just made sense. He works with her all the time. Like, why not use her for this role? And I think she understood. I think she understood the assignment too, and I think that she understood that Rob clearly loves these characters. I'm going to step up, play this character. Same way Daniel Roebuck loved the Munsters, and he stepped in and he plays the character in a way where it's not Al Lewis, but it's his own version. It really emulates that in a way. So, I thought she was fine.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is one of those roles that I don't get beating up on Sherry for personally. But throwing my feelings aside here, other Gabe. It's so weird to call you other Gabe, but I want to throw it to you here. Sherry is a polarizing figure. What are your thoughts on her stepping into the role of Lily Munster?
Since I have nothing to base it on, I think she did a very great job, phenomenal job. As a person that has loved Rob Zombie's music career as well, yeah. I feel like it's just an extended version of her from the Living Dead Girl video.
It's pretty similar. Yeah,
it's very similar, sort of like similar hair, similar style, obviously a little bit more subdued, right, than the Living Dead Girl video. But I don't know. I really enjoyed her in that role. I think she's she's a pretty strong actress for horror in a sense, right? I mean, she's not going to carry she's not going to be a leading lady of like some other, like a romantic comedy type.
Right.
But what Rob uses her for here and for most of his roles, I think she's more than serviceable for his movies.
She has never been as bad as people say she is. I don't understand what is the role that that proves that she's a terrible actress. I mean, there are things about her that grate on people, and I get that. It comes back to stylistic choice. I mean, I think she's intentionally grating as Baby, especially in House of a Thousand Corpses. She gives a very different kind of performance and brings much more kind of grounded energy, although she's still... she would be this like fan cast for a Harley Quinn in a more perfect world. Like she and Richard Brake could be the horror community's answer to the Joker and Harley Quinn. If I guess that was directed by Rob Zombie. Let's, if we can, also talk about Jeff Daniel Phillips, who for me, he's the thing about this movie that actually captured my heart. The atmosphere was charming. The dialogue was, we'll talk about the dialogue soon because that's just a whole section of criticism that I would like to deal with. But as soon as Jeff Daniel Phillips comes into the movie, it's not his movie. He doesn't steal the scene. He actually has a lot of chemistry with his fellow actors, especially Daniel Roebuck. I love their dynamic. Really gives the movie new life every time they get to share the screen together. Probably my favorite joke. It's a dumb joke, but when Grandpa he's storming up there to confront Herman. He knocks on the door. I can't remember why. He has a like some champagne in his hand, I guess, to knock it over from his head.
Yeah.
And the love-struck Herman just takes it right out of his hand without missing a beat because he is just so in love.
And then he tries to tip him.
Then he tries
when he knocks again.
Because he's a good guy, that Herman Munster. Look, it's a pretty radical departure from Herman. And Fred Gwynn's take on Herman is just, I don't know how you top that or supplant that. I don't even know how you try to go for that without being in his shadow. I think sort of radicalism, I think, was welcome, especially if we're going back and seeing the origin of Herman Munster. I've always been a big fan of Jeff Daniel Phillips ever since he got his face stomped in by Michael Myers in Halloween 2. Still one of my favorite kills. He has probably one of the best scenes in that movie, just from a character writing standpoint. The hit the bricks Dorothy thing, that's Rob at his best. And then he's been solid ever since. And now I want to turn it over to everybody to see, does anybody here share my enthusiasm for Jeff Daniel Phillips?
I mean, I could say I do. As a fan of Herman Munster as a character, he's kind of in a weird and twisted way like the ultimate TV dad, because he's like a dummy, kind of like, like a Homer Simpson or a Peter Griffin, but he's much more like, he's got heart, and that's what sets him apart. He's not just like a blubbering idiot who gets the family into trouble all the time. He's like a TV dad. He's like a sitcom dad. And in this, obviously there's no children for him to play off of. He's, a love-struck rock star, I guess. But I think it was the best thing to do to only keep the characteristics from Herman that are repeatable. I think we can see in most of the time after they recast Fred Gwynn in the movies, and Tony will be able to kind of attest to this, really, Here Comes the Munsters from the 90s is the closest we ever got to Herman Munster again. And even that was a difficult, there were times where it was difficult to watch because you saw this person just emulating instead of keeping parts and playing off of them, but making it your own. So that was the closest that we got. But other than that, everybody else had a really hard time getting it down. So I think writing this character differently to be a bit of a different person. He is a little bit more of a blubbering idiot, which I kind of like. But it's like, I don't know. It's like Rob meeting these people was the moment he knew he was going to cast him if he ever made the Munsters. Like, as soon as he met Jeff, it's like he was like, yeah, I'm going to cast that guy as Herman if I ever make the Munsters.
That literally happened. I think
that feels like that's, yes.
I think as early as them working on Halloween 2, when Rob was first trying to get this off the ground, or I guess trying to get this iteration off the ground, he called Jeff Daniel Phillips and said, hey, I want to know if you want to play Herman Munster. I'm pitching the Munsters soon. And like Jeff Daniel Phillips apparently had like an anxiety attack because he went from being like a day player to possibly playing one of the most famous characters in sitcom history. It's like it's a wild thing. And this is the part where, like, I understand, especially if you actually are a big fan of the Munsters growing up, if that's your entry point into this movie, it is going to feel pretty jarring. And I think that's a sticking point with people who even might like other things that Rob's going for. Now let's turn this over to the Munsters fan. At least I think the biggest Munsters fan out of anybody here. Tony, tell me, how do you feel, I guess, about Jeff Daniel Phillips leading up to this and his performance here?
Well, I thought he was really funny in his other roles. He kind of gives me, I love that, like, Danny McBride energy, no shit's given kind of character. And I like that, especially Halloween 2, the 2 minutes he's in that movie, he really has that kind of confidence until he gets his face smashed in. And I thought he really stole his little moment in there. And we haven't really mentioned the movie, but I love Lords of Salem. That's one of Rob's movies that I just think when he goes for, the Rosemary's Baby thing, and he kind of like owns it. And there's so many great moments in there. He being one of them. I think he's a great supporting character in that. Going into this, I thought he looked the part. I like the makeup on all of them. I think it looks great.
Fantastic, yeah.
Now, when it comes to the performance, I think that's where I disagree. with everybody. I think he really brings the movie down for me.
Ooh, okay.
To start the movie, I'm really into it. A lot of the gags, especially Richard Brake, the whole throwback to Frankenstein, everything here is working. The introduction to Herman is awesome. It's so zany. And there's so many moments in here that I like what they're setting up for him. I just don't know if I like Rob and Jeff Daniel Phillips' take on the character. I think the voice is a little too high pitched for me, and I can't understand what he's saying half the time. It's just, maybe it's just, it goes back to Gabe, what you're saying, where for some people it might just be jarring to see that kind of iteration. And and nothing about it's like, oh, this is like offensively bad. Where it's more so just like, I wish they would have want more of the classic Herman Munster. I'm not asking for like a straight up impersonation. I just wish I saw more of that character from the 60s show and the movie in this version of him. He's probably the weakest out of the three for me.
I'm happy that we have that viewpoint represented, because that is something you're going to consistently see in reviews, whether or not people, again, like or dislike the movie. I think people who enjoy this performance are in the minority, and that minority is the Jeff Daniel Phillips fan club, which I am currently the president and sole member of. I mean, maybe my fellow Gabe can back me up on this. I don't know. The high pitched voice thing, it's a choice. It's
also common for him. Like he did that in Halloween 2 as Uncle Seymour Coffins. He did that in Lords of Salem to a small extent as the Geico caveman. He did it.
He was the Geico caveman.
Yes. So
I think he's a wonderful physical actor. I love seeing him take the idea of being Frankenstein's monster and incorporating that into his physicality. I love the way he lumbers around, but he's so kind of, he tries to turn it into a swagger and it fails. It's like this really glorious piece of physical comedy. I want to compare him to like a Jim Carrey type of performance. He doesn't go as big as the most exaggerated Jim Carrey performances, but this bumbling goofball, zany weirdo with the heart of gold, I think Jim Carrey couldn't have done that version of the character better. I think Jeff Daniel Phillips really, I think it's the unexpectedness and the freshness of that choice that I really appreciate. I mean, again, I want to see if my fellow Gabe here can back me up.
I think I'm more in the middle. I see both of your guys' points. And again, I'm somebody that never watched the Munsters. I mean, I know, obviously I knew of them, but as somebody who never watched it, I don't think the performance is bad. I also don't think it's good. I could definitely see Tony's point where he says he can't understand them half the time. I watch all my movies with closed caption, so I'm able to understand whatever everybody is saying. He had this joke that upon rewatch, I finally was getting all the jokes. Where I thought it was just like I couldn't stop laughing this morning. It was like, about the glass coffins, remains to be seen, and I'm like, oh shit! Like I was laughing this morning about that. Like all day, I was like, remains to be seen. I was like, yeah, all right, cool. But I think his performance wasn't terrible. I mean, it wasn't great. I really thought it was middle of the road, and I was just like, all right. I mean, I don't think it adds or detracts anything from the entire movie at all for me.
So nobody else was absolutely charmed by his rendition of "I've Got You, Babe." Am I the only one that was like awestruck at the magic of that scene?
I was with you on everything. That's the one part that I don't love as much. Like I would have liked it more.
Connor,
so
can't let me down here.
No, because here's the thing, right? Like it's hard for a character to be charming when they start to annoy me. And in that, he did annoy me. I did not like his voice in that song. I would have honestly thought, like, rewatching it this time, I was like, man, I kind of wish, like, Herman, like, they showed Herman kind of give up the music career thing. And I kind of wish at that point, like, it showed them on a date and, like, two other, like, monster creatures were singing it. And then we had the montage and everything of them, like, falling in love. Just because his voice was so grating in it. And Sherry's was fine. Like, I didn't have an issue with her part. But yeah, that one was a little tough. I can't back you up there. I can back up everything else you said. I think he's got all the heart. I think he's got all the intention. I cannot back you up on that.
So are you
know,
saying
it's funny because I like that sequence in the movie.
Really?
Wow! All right.
I actually really do like it. I think it's a lot of fun. I like the you have the creature from the Black Lagoon-esque in there with them in the movie theater and stuff, and and them dressing up as Sonny and Cher.
Listen,
I don't know, that's
the best song was at the beginning, Disco Vampire.
Disco Vampire was
Count Orloff is the MVP of the movie.
I think we need to discuss. I think we need to discuss Richard Brake now. You know, before we get to Daniel Roebuck, because I think we're gonna all have. I don't know if we're gonna be all on the same page with Daniel Roebuck, but I think Richard Brake is one that you could really go either way on. I saw a lot of reviews that really hated on both of his roles in this movie. I saw some that loved it. Just throwing my thoughts in real quick, I thought he nailed both of his roles as Count Orlok and this doctor, this mad doctor who makes Herman. I guess let me throw it back to my co-host here. What were your thoughts about both of his takes in this movie?
Look, Richard Brake is my dad. He's my father. He's sir to me, so I can't do anything but completely endorse whatever the man does cinematically. Ever since he shot Bruce Wayne's parents, the man has just been on an odyssey.
He did shoot Bruce Wayne.
That's right. Yes, he did. Now I haven't seen that Doom movie. I don't know if that's the one black mark against him.
I have seen Doom. It is not the only black mark against him, but it is one of them.
Okay, well, I've only, I guess, seen the high points. I just rewatched Barbarian. I mean, you only need to give him this limited amount of time for him to make an indelible impression. And by that, I mean, he will haunt you forever for the rest of your life. Now, he gets to take that energy and completely invert it. And I think the other reason actors like working with Rob is that he does give them challenges, or he gives them new material. Like Richard Brake got to do 2 different roles that brought out his comedic skills like nothing I've ever seen, but it's still in his wheelhouse. It's still Richard Brake land. He has, he has some of the best chemistry with actor's name escapes me. The guy from the Weezer album cover, who's the guy?
You're talking about the guy from Lost.
The guy from Lost. Yeah. The show that I have not seen and will never see. That guy.
Oh man, no. Honestly, like before we started, I asked my wife. I just wanted to get her opinion, and I was like, "What was your favorite part of the movie?" And she said, "The scene with the rats." And I was like, "Oh, where he's showing the picture of all of his rats?" And she was like, "Yeah, that's my favorite scene," because he does. He gets to show this charm that I don't think he's ever gotten to show before. Like in Doom and Halloween 2, he's like this creepy, just slimy guy. In Mandy, he's barely in that, but he's like this psychedelic like weirdo with a tiger, and he just always gets these roles. And in 31, he really got a chance to shine as an actor, but he didn't really get to show his funny side. And in this, all of his comedy for me worked in this. And I'm curious, you know, we kind of got Gabe from Not That Bad's take on this. I want to throw it to other Gabe now. What did you think about Richard Brake in this movie? Did you kind of get a little bit more from him than you had gotten in his previous roles with Rob?
I think that, like you said, it showed another side of him, and it showed a more complete side as an actor. Because, you know, I think most of all of his scenes in this movie are very memorable. Yeah, you know, from his date with with Sherry, and like I said, Disco Vampire just lives rent free in my head. Yeah. I really want to, go on YouTube and just, listen to that, like a full rendition of that song. Get the laser light show going and stuff like that.
Little fireworks at the end.
Little firework, absolutely. It's
even just his entrance. I mean,
right.
That says everything you need to say.
Like, could we get like a whole Count movie and just like have a whole movie of him?
Give us a Rob Zombie
Robert
Munsters
Eggers
series.
Fuck Robert Eggers making a Nosferatu movie. I want Rob Zombie making a Nosferatu movie.
Yep.
Yeah, imagine that. It would be good.
Every actor here is just I mean, Rob's cast. It always seems like there's this party that's going on, and I feel like I've been invited every time, no matter how horrific the material, the camaraderie you feel and the excitement of people to be there, and the enthusiasm that they have in working with Rob and how mutual that feeling is. It's the exact same feeling you get watching a Quentin Tarantino movie when you see all of those returning actors. Like you get this kind of parasocial quality to it. But even people who've never been in a Rob Zombie movie before, we have Elvira herself, Cassandra Peterson. Yes. She has a minor but pivotal role, and she kills it. Sylvester McCoy plays the Bat, or the man who is going to become the Bat. I've never watched Doctor Who, but I understand that's his big thing before this. But his scenes with Daniel Roebuck were delightful. So, I mean, does anybody else have a big standout cast member here, at least from the supporting cast, not our principal actors?
Well, I think you say, and just real quick, it's something very important with Rob, and we've talked about how he uses the same people, right? But I feel he's so comfortable in using these people and showcasing them in a different light that we've never seen before. Yeah. And that's because they've worked together. So Rob is very comfortable being like, you know what, Richard Blake, go ahead and you do your own thing. I know you're going to kill it. I trust you to do this part, right? I trust, you, Sherry, to do this part. Like, if you see all these movies, like, Sherry's played a very different part in everything, and she's killed it in everything. It's not, he lets them step outside their comfort zone, which I think is key in something like this.
Yeah. I mean, and even with Sherry in this, like, even with Lily being a departure, her second role as the quick little news anchor, you don't even recognize her. Like, she's unrecognizable in that role. You can't even really tell it's her, and she kills it. And before we go too far off, and I know Jorge Garcia was the person that we mentioned earlier from Lost, who this was also his first Rob Zombie film, and he did a good job fitting into that world. But somebody who we were talking about was Richard Brake. And Tony, we didn't quite get your thoughts on that yet, and I want to see if you are with what seems to be the consensus so far that Richard Brake was pretty much a standout in this movie.
Yeah, you could pretty much put him in like anything. He's such a great. When it comes to character actors, I feel like the guys that are so good at it, when you see them pop up in things, you're just excited that they're there.
Yeah,
and he's one of them. I even got to, when we saw him over the summer at Mad Monster, I was gushing to him about Barbarian. He's just like, whatever he's in, Rob Zombie projects or whatever it is, he's such a cool guy, and I like seeing him in this. It's so like Rob gives him two very fun roles. One that's like a homage to Frankenstein, and he has to do one that's a homage to, Dracula in general. So, I thought he was a lot of fun in this.
Well, I honestly, we've covered a lot of people so far. I want to talk briefly about one real quick, because this seems to be one that a lot of the haters of this movie had a lot to say about, and that's Thomas Boykin as Lester, the brother of Lily Munster. This was a weird one to just have in the movie, and I'm curious, and I'll start with my co-host here. Any impressions on the brother?
Look, there are people that think they know a thing or two. They think it, but then they open their mouth and they reveal they don't. This was hilarious. What do you want from this movie exactly? If you're complaining about this performance, it is so period. It's so period. I'm talking like period PC. I mean, we're really drawing from the well of the 60s and 70s counterculture. And I don't see how you could criticize Rob for creating that world and filling it out with characters that fit that world. If you didn't want Munsters to live in that environment, I'm going to go back to that thing of just don't watch the movie and you will be fine. I don't mean to be too condescending to the people who don't like this movie. There are reasons to not like it. I just acknowledge that Jeff Daniel Phillips is definitely a potential risk to people of a certain sensibility, but now you're just bitching when you start like complaining about like, oh, like this guy didn't like how he had that street talk. I want my werewolves to be erudite and sophisticated and the transatlantic. I don't know what people wanted, so it just seems like people are just not gelling with the movie at that point. It's an awesome performance.
The Wolfman was a jive turkey. No, I don't mind it. Like, it just feels like you said, like people just wanted to bitch about something. I feel like everybody else's performance was so elevated that, I mean, even if he was whatever, like I don't mind him. Plus, I mean, I like a little bit of ghetto in my characters or my movies. You know what I'm saying? Like I just like it. I don't know. I didn't mind it. I thought he was like a street savvy Wolfman. Like he was a little bit greasy, like, doing backroom deals, trying to make money. Who's not trying to make money? Who's not trying to make backroom deals?
It's one of those things where if this movie said written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, people would eat that shit up. I've no doubt.
Is it right? Exactly. Like like you said, why, like what you want the Wolfman to be like all straight up and upfront about the things that he does? Like no.
If you're offended by white screenwriters writing street talk, then I have bad news for you. If you're a fan of Quentin Tarantino, because I don't know if you've looked up a picture of that man. But
oh jeez,
he says Caucasian as they come.
I feel I'll give more of a pass to Rob Zombie on Street Talk than I would Quentin, just because of all the metal that Rob Zombie has played. So
it's a solid point. I'm curious, Tony. After Gabe just said that nobody should be complaining about this, do you have any complaints about Lester?
No. My complaints with the movie are really not even with the cast, and besides the Herman Munster rendition, that's just I just couldn't jive with that. But
right.
Lester, I thought was a fun character that I wish we just had gotten that storyline and that idea. I wish it was more stakes in that, just a little bit, because I did have fun with that aspect of the story. I don't know, it's silly, it's cool. It's cool seeing a guy that's a Wolfman, Lily's brother, up to no good, causing, with the whole subplot with the deed and whatnot. So, I had fun with it.
Perfect. And I think that leads us to somebody who we could talk about for a long time, or we could talk about for no time at all, depending on how we truly feel about it. But Mr. Daniel Roebuck playing Grandpa, we touched on it, but I'd like everybody to kind of nail down their opinions on this guy, because he's not unfamiliar with the Rob Zombie verse. He was obviously in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. He's been in several of his movies.
He's also in the first one.
He was in the first one too. Briefly, his role in the second one was a little, let's say, expanded. But he was also he was in 31. And Rob talked about how he made him a priest character to mess with him because he knows he's religious. He's actually a guy who's recently been in mostly like religious films. So it was kind of cool for fans of his to see him come back to something like this. And
I'd something like watchable. Is that what you're saying?
Well, to come back to form, to have a chance to play a real character again. And I'm gonna throw it back to you here, Tony.
Okay.
What were your thoughts on Daniel Roebuck? And I guess without comparing him too much to Al Lewis, how do you think he stood as Grandpa Munster, or in this case, the Count?
Oh, I thought he was awesome. I saw a video years ago where he was talking about his love for the Munsters, and he's another guy that just loves these characters, and he does something very smart where he does it. His rendition of the Count feels like a Seinfeld character.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. It's not Al Lewis. He's not trying to be Al Lewis, but I feel like it's that same level of energy without doing the same voice or anything. I like the mustache they gave the Count. I thought the design of him was really cool. The backstory of how he gets the bat. Everything about the Count, his line delivery is it's perfect. I don't think he's dealing with the best jokes on paper, but I think he just knocks it out the park. That's like, for this movie, it is just perfect casting. Had this been made by anybody else too, I still would say the same thing. He would be the perfect guy for that role. No, I really enjoyed it.
Perfect. And another Gabe, I'm going to throw it to you here. This is going to get to me. Just calling you other Gabe this whole time. But the Count. Daniel Roebuck as the Count. Where do you stand?
I feel like the Count himself is iconic, right? I mean, growing up, when you would see like the Doritos display, you would see Elvira with the Count in like the 90s. So when I see the Count here, there's a little bit of a difference, but I feel like there's like no, like I'm seeing like the Count from like the 90s, from like the advertisements on display. I love the performance. I think it's one of the strongest performance in this movie was his. Like by far, it was his performance that really carried the movie. His line delivery was just like right on point. Like he was beat for beat with every other character with him.
And Gabe from Not That Bad. I would like to hear your brief thoughts.
He really understands the assignment. Probably the most out of anybody in this cast.
Yeah.
He has a really great career. He's starred in, movies like The Fugitive.
Yeah.
For horror fans, we recognize him from Final Destination. Daniel Roebuck has a long, proud career, but to me, this is like a moment for him playing Grandpa in this movie, and he really gets to have more fun and be more of a presence than what I've seen him in. So it was just a really great vibe. It was really fun to see him with Jeff Daniel Phillips. Tony, would you agree at least that their chemistry specifically, that there's something that works there, right?
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, in the show they're more like buddies. They're always coming up with schemes together.
Yes.
Especially but I do like, okay, if we're going back to the beginning and they're gonna butt heads in a way, he goes at him a lot. And I think that juxtaposition of Herman being this, this version being more of a dunce and this sweetheart, and Daniel Roebuck's Count being more aggressive, I thought that worked. I think when they're going back and forth, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy those aspects of it for sure.
Yeah, like the one part for me that I always, I've watched this several times. I always laugh at their first encounter when Herman shows up at the castle and the Count's yelling down to him, and then they're like they bounce off of each other really well.
Right.
But something that you had mentioned there, Tony, that I think is a good way to kind of transition off of the cast is the design of these characters and the makeup effects. It's something that could have easily been not part of a budget. There are movies that, let's say, don't prioritize that. Rob kind of took that in another direction here. And speaking specifically on Grandpa, or in this case, the Count, sorry, it's hard when you watch the Munsters all the time to not call him Grandpa Munster. But I actually, and I'm going to, be a little controversial here, I actually prefer this design of the character. I think it's fantastic. I really want the NECA figure that they made of it. I would proudly display that on a shelf. And I want to throw it to just quickly back to my co-host here. As far as character design goes for these characters, is there someone that stands out to you, and how would you sort of grade it overall in this movie for what truthfully is a low budget family horror-esque movie?
The cool thing about this movie is that it took that low budget and it ran with it in the way that it needed to. This is kitschy and it's handmade. It's a testament to this era of again Halloween specials, like the era of Elvira, of the Munsters, of Mystery Science Theater 3000. I mean, there's a deliberate artificiality to everything here that I think really works for the atmosphere. It was a really wise decision. I don't know if Rob, if he could have gotten a bigger budget, what would that movie look like? What does a $40 million Munsters movie by Rob Zombie look like? I almost don't want to see it. And listening to him in interviews, I think he actually works really well under constraints. He complained that on House of a Thousand Corpses, they really just threw money at the whole project. And it's a movie that he doesn't look back on fondly. He's not as proud of it as he is some of his later projects. Ironically, some of the ones that, but from a filmmaking standpoint, I can I can see what he means, because when you're just given free reign, it's very hard to actually make these kind of economical choices that are actually going to really benefit the movie, instead of just, getting to be the kid in the candy store. And I feel like that's the work ethic he took when he made this. And again, it's not a tribute to the Munsters. These aren't perfectly paired character designs when you look back at that original show and all of the more traditional iterations of these characters. But that's really not the mission here. I think Grandpa is a really cool update. Sherry looks the part. She was born to play a vampire. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing about Jeff Daniel Phillips is he just has a really odd type of build for somebody playing a Frankenstein monster. That's probably the most distracting thing about his performance for me. He's like one of the lankier Frankenstein types that we've gotten. I don't know if
his lift shoes are a little more obvious than some of the other Frankensteins we've gotten in the past.
Yeah, and he has the physicality as an actor to pull it off. Yeah. But everybody else, I mean, you can't get me to say a mean thing, a nasty thing about the look of this movie, from the character design to the set design to whatever.
And other Gabe here, would you agree with that?
I definitely agree. I think there's something special. Just to piggyback up from the other Gabe over there. Is that Rob Zombie really is at his best when his budget is so limited. I mean, coming from the music world, right? He's doing music videos for himself, for White Zombie, on that stuff, right? You're talking about small budgets. Like, I feel like that's where his bread and butter is. That's where he learned how to direct. That's how you learn how move the camera, how to do your backgrounds and what have you. So this movie it reminds me of like a neon gothic type of scenery, right? Talk about a lot of neon, a lot of black lights. I told Tony this last night. What it reminds me of, it's like a porn parody without the sex.
Is that a compliment?
Which I've seen that said by critics of the movie.
Yeah.
But I say it as a compliment to it, because that's I feel like this is what the movie needs. Like, it's a Halloween special. It's not taking itself too serious. We know what the subject matter is, and it's very campy. It's very fun. I love the fucking bright lights mixed in with like the dark gothic aesthetic. I think it's awesome. I think it works really well, the way that Rob was able to blend everything together.
It's like a Technicolor Universal Monsters movie.
Yeah, I'll say that it's like it's like they tried to modernize the whole idea of a Technicolor Universal Monsters movie with the, and they kind of had to do that. I think if this was shot with the intention of looking good in black and white, I don't know that it would have been as impactful to look at that, and I don't know that it would have been impressive knowing that this movie had a low budget. And
we also know if it was black and white, Gabe just wouldn't watch it.
So. Well, that's true too. I've watched enough Flopbuster to know that other Gabe is not a fan of the black and white movies.
Actually, I watched. I just bought The Mist on 4K. I watched that in black and white.
It's in black and white.
Yeah, the 4K edition, the special edition.
There are
it comes
two
with
versions.
Black and white.
Yeah,
the director's cut is black and white. That's how Frank Darabont wanted to release it. Of course, the studios wouldn't let that happen.
It is awesome in black and white.
That's cool. We bought that version. I didn't even know the black and white was out there. I'll have to check that out.
We learn things every day, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I mean, speaking to what both of you guys said, both Gabes there. Sorry to cut you off there, Gabe. But one thing that you guys said is that Rob works well within constraints.
No worries.
And I think I think that's something that rings true in his commentaries, because even if you had brought up House of a Thousand Corpses, if you go back to that and you watch the commentary for it, he's not really talking about any of these impressive set pieces or any of these like crazy things that you can tell they spent money on. Like, he gets really excited when like in the like intro, there's a part where they're kind of going through this like dingy like brick, like just tunnel somewhere, and he got really excited saying like, oh yeah, we were on tour somewhere and we just found this place and we just filmed it with like a handheld camcorder and we put it in the movie. Like that's what he gets excited about. He gets excited about what I miss in movies today, which is the magic of movie making. And it's why I think when you can give him a budget from the lowest tier to the highest tier, and I think he's going to make the absolute most of it every single time.
He misses the handmade quality that movies used to have, where even movies with a higher budget than this, right, because of either limitations of technology or because of the passions of their directors, they didn't push everything off until post. They wanted to make the movie there in production on set. They wanted to be able to step into the world of the movie so that the audience could feel immersed into the world of that movie, which is why he gets more excited about the thought of, I guess, shooting a random brick tunnel that he found on the road than, going to some green screen studio in Culver City and creating something like, what a Star Wars universe might look like, or whatever, pick your big tentpole franchise. They're all doing that trick now.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to say something, y'all. I'm going to keep rambling.
Now I'm trying to be courteous too. I'm pulling a Gabe myself at this point.
My audio went out, so I thought everybody got quiet.
Okay, well, it was like a stare down. Everybody was just staring at each other. It was very intense.
I just don't want to like over talk on top of people because you know what I'm saying? Like, because I reckon, like, we're talking about Rob Zombie and his budget. It's sort of like, in a way, like a Kevin Smith in a sense, where they really love a small budget. They don't really like to work with a lot of CGI. Kevin Smith is on a different path. Like me and Tony have talked about him, where he started off really strong, and then anyways, Rob Zombie has that same sort of quality where he just wants to make the best movie possible with not a lot of studio interference, and he just wants to have fun with him and his friends. And I feel like this movie was maybe a showcase and a highlight of it. It's just he just wanted.
Now, I'm sorry. I just had this realization that Rob Zombie is in the middle of a spectrum between Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith. Like that feels so clear to me now. And I don't want to.
It really does.
He kind of has the pros of Quentin and the cons of a Kevin Smith.
I guess you're not wrong there.
Although Rob has yet to make his misguided lesbian romance starring Ben Affleck.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Well, I will give him this over Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith, Kevin Smith does not know how to light a movie, how to shoot a movie. He knows nothing about cameras. And that really hurt him in the second half of his career. Rob, it's very clear, whether you like his movies or not, he knows everything about shooting a movie. The ins and outs of it, talking about it. Clearly, he's friends with guys like Tarantino and Rodriguez. The dude loves film. And this movie, it looks beautiful. And he had to shoot it with a crew that didn't speak English at all. So, hats off to him. This movie, it looks gorgeous. From the set design to the post, everything about it. So at least he's got that going for him.
Hey, Rob could have signed me up as an interpreter if nobody spoke English. I could have spoken Spanish with him.
In Prague?
You could have. You could have. He's mistranslating everything.
Dude, there's Mexicans everywhere. We're in Prague.
But it's interesting that we should address the criticism though, especially after that trailer came out. This movie's look and its style did not appeal to a vast amount of people, and it's a curious thing to contend with because people throw around words like cheap, this very charged word. People say it's a porn parody without the sex, which
but now it's a good thing. That's a good
thing. It's a good thing.
We're reclaiming that.
Yes.
I know. I guess I think what I would like to challenge our discussion with is the question of what does the bad version of this look like? What would it look like if Rob failed at this attempt to, do exactly what I'm talking about? And I want to posit a movie that I've been thinking about during this discussion for a long time, which is Tim Burton's Dark Shadows. Has anybody else seen that?
I think that's exactly what
I haven't seen that since it came out. I almost forgot about that movie. I haven't seen that in forever.
It existed. It was around.
I didn't even see it.
Yeah. I've never seen the Dark Shadows show. It used to come on like MeTV. I used to watch like TV Land and like MeTV. It would come on, but it just was never something that I sat down for. So that movie, I don't remember a thing about that movie, to tell you the truth.
I remember that movie well because I hated it. I detested that movie. When I got done, my whole family was like, "Wow, that was really good," and I was like, "Oh my god, did we watch a different movie?" I was in hell. I think that's what this. But see, posing that question is difficult because to everyone else, pretty much, even friend of the show, Cody Leach, he did fail in this movie, and this was a bit of a failure. For audiences, people said that they didn't laugh at the jokes, and that's something that you would fail with at a comedy. And people said that it didn't look great. It looked like the pilot of a TV show. It was just extended, and that failed the movie department.
Absolutely,
for the movie buffs.
I totally agree that according to a lot of people, this isn't charming. This is just cheap. And I guess what I'm trying to get to the heart of is, okay, was it, according to them, is it bad that Rob went this direction? Was it just misguided? Are we really saying goodbye to that kind of era of movie, that quality of movie that gets made so rarely these days? And Dark Shadows, really ironically, it does not look cheap. I'll give it that. It had a healthy budget. You had Tim Burton, who was given carte blanche to do whatever, even though he was totally on autopilot when he directed that movie.
He still is.
Hey, I think he's been on autopilot.
He's been on autopilot for like 25 years.
Yeah.
Talking about Kevin Smith and Tim Burton just hurts the heart, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It hurts. But
I think there's a bias. There's a bias when it comes to Rob Zombie. 100%. There's a bias to Kevin Smith. To all directors, there's a bias, right? We could even take the new Exorcist movie. There's a bias that went into that movie entirely. The bias for Rob Zombie is when this trailer came out, it was, oh my god, this looks terrible. This looks cheap. This looks exactly like a Rob Zombie movie. Nothing, whatever. I feel like that trailer, I don't even think it was maybe even cut by Rob Zombie. Maybe you guys could correct me. I think maybe the studio just cut together. Because didn't this trailer come out like maybe a couple months before the movie was due out?
I heard it was a Universal 1440 trailer. I heard
they put out a really good teaser.
Yeah.
And I felt like shit because me and Gabe, when we did the notes for the show, I always go to Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, and Variety. Because those are like the ones that are like, if it's official from them, it makes sense. Like this is what we go off of for box office and all the other things we broke down. When this movie was dropping, when the trailers were dropping, Variety reported the $40 million budget. And they added on there. So for me, seeing the context, seeing the trailer, I'm like, I don't know. It makes no sense because this is like a terrible trailer. The audio is horrifying. I'm seeing Universal 1414 as the logo. Where the fuck did they get $40 million from? None of these movies are have that budget. So none of it made sense to me. Even I felt like a victim of believing that too. So I feel like he had all that working against him. And the internet, people that had no interest in seeing this movie were clowning it because they're like, this costs $40 million.
Yeah.
Like, fuck this movie.
That is the entire thesis of like the Jeremy Johns review was how did this cost $40 million?
Yeah.
But see, the teaser that Rob Zombie released, we were all like, oh my god, this looks so great. Because the teaser was
the intro.
Yeah. It was released about like a month, maybe 3 weeks before the actual trailer dropped. And then so it was like, all right, but Rob Zombie released that. He released the teaser and we're like, oh shit, that looks cool. Yeah. And then 3 weeks later, we got the trailer and we were like, oh shit, that looks fucking horrible. So that's what my question is like, okay, so Rob Zombie did his teaser and the studio just said like, fuck it, we need a trailer. And we're just going to fucking put this together. And then Rob Zombie had like no input to this trailer. And so then we get that bias of that trailer already. And people are like, oh, well, this is going to look like shit. This movie's going to look like shit.
I heard from what I heard, rumor mill. So don't take this. I don't think we've gotten an official story, but from what I understood, the studio had the dailies. They had all of the, they had the rough cut of the movie, but they didn't have as they were continuing to work on it. Like they needed to release a trailer, and from what I understand, they were not given the edited, the mastered version of these clips, so they just threw one together, and including a voiceover guy who, like, they didn't put a prop filter on the mic. Like, it was terrible. But I don't think, even if that trailer would have nailed it, there's something I put in the ugly section, because I always format my notes like the original format of our show. It just helps me organize my thoughts. And one of the things I put is just that it came from Rob Zombie. He could make anything. He could make anything at all. And if it comes from him, there is a large group of people, I would say arguably a majority of people, who are going to root against it. And if they're not rooting against it, they're already going to count it out. It's something that we've seen time and time again. It's like he made one of what many consider to be one of the greatest horror movies of the 2000s. He made that just before he made Halloween. And then he makes Halloween, and everything he's done since then has been considered, and including those movies, has been considered the biggest atrocities in the horror genre. In a genre where we have some of the legitimately crimes against cinema. The horror genre has more than any other genre, in my opinion. Maybe comedy, if you want to talk about those really schlocky B-movie, just terrible comedy movies. But people consider him like the Antichrist of horror.
Well, I think the thing about him, and this is something from his rock star days that probably rubs people the wrong way in the idea of him being this auteur, is that he genuinely does not care what you think.
No.
And he could not be less interested in your criticisms of his movie and why you ruined Michael Myers. And don't you ever do that again. Wait, you did it again and you put a white horse in it this time? Yeah, I think, because I was wondering, like, what inspires so much more hatred for Rob Zombie more than an Eli Roth? Like, I know Eli Roth has his own haters, and honestly, he probably has a lower reputation, because I really don't know any diehard Eli Roth fans. I mean, that guy flamed out after his second movie, if you ask me.
What do you mean? He made The House with the Cock in Its Walls. That's a really good That's a really good family movie.
Oh God, no.
Porn parody without the sex. So I was going back to that question. Like, people can't really think Rob is a worse filmmaker than Eli Roth, but Eli Roth has clearly been chasing he's been trying to win fans back. I just see that, like, that Green Inferno movie. It's like, I'm still the guy who made Cabin Fever. I know you like that movie. I'm friends with Quentin Tarantino. And Rob has, not that I don't think he doesn't want to be the most hated filmmaker. I think he just wants to feel proud of what he does. And those goals can be misaligned with the audience, especially when he takes on an IP. Like, we haven't even talked about this as a Munsters movie, which shows you how big of a shadow Rob cast. But, like, we haven't even talked about this as a Munsters adaptation, more so than a Rob Zombie movie. That just says a lot.
But is it Rob Zombie fans or Rob Zombie haters, or is the toxicity mostly coming from Halloween fans? Because I'll say this: look at The Exorcist, look at David Gordon Green, right? All of a sudden, he touched Halloween, the hallowed Halloween, and now The Exorcist believer sucks. Like, that has its own issues, but it's not as bad as everybody's saying it is. It's like, it's like, okay, you touched Halloween and you fucked up, with Halloween Ends or whatever, and now your Exorcist sucks. Oh, Halloween 2, they suck. Now every single movie Rob Zombie does after that's gonna suck because he touched Halloween. It's like, it comes in with, like, Halloween fans are coming in with their own toxicity towards these two directors, and it's like, fuck all the movies that you're making from here on out.
Yeah, well, very rarely does somebody touch. It's almost like the curse of the franchise. Like, very rarely does a director come into a franchise and come out of it unscathed. If it's the first movie, then that's going to launch you into superstardom. You can pretty much do whatever else you want after that. And people like John Carpenter have shown that. Wes Craven has shown that. Like the masters of the genre, James Wan, have all shown that if you launch a franchise, you are probably in good hands. But like looking back on the Halloween franchise, like it's happened to every single director. Not saying that Dominique Gothin-Girard is the greatest director of all time, but Night Angel's not a terrible movie. And
I call bullshit on Halloween fans. First of all,
yes, that's a big thing.
Go ahead, thank you. Go ahead.
Because they apparently hate everything, and then 5-10 years later go, I actually like it now. I'm gonna buy like the 10 copies of the Scream Factory for $40 each. Dude, you hated the movie when it came out. 10 years later, now you're saying it's amazing. Now you're saying you like the version where he fucks his niece or whatever, the Big Adventure bullshit. You like all of it. Just admit that you like all of it. Just admit it. In 10 years down the line, we're going to say Halloween ends. Oh, fans are going to go, I love Halloween ends. I love that the risk that it took. I love that evil kind of consumes the whole town. They're going to use that argument just like they used the argument for how he fucked his sister and it was so hot. And then, his cousin or his niece, sorry, not his sister. Although that would have been fine too. But anyway, Halloween fans, they don't know what they want because they're not real movie fans. I don't know what it is. They're just fucking weird and they're creepy. They live in their mom's basements and they only watch Halloween movies. And
let's dial it back a little. And I really don't want to be the guy to defend Halloween fans because I've earned their ire many times.
Look, I am a Halloween fan, and that was incredible.
And a Star Wars fan.
And a Star Wars fan. What does that say about me?
The thing is, this is what happens when you corporatize an idea. This is what happens when you Halloween. It could have just been one really good movie back in 1978 that we could revisit, that we could keep talking to, that would just be that kind of pure thing. I think me and Connor just recorded an episode talking about Halloween 3 season of The Witch Show. I don't want to retread ourselves too much,
right?
But I was comparing it to something like this is a very different type of movie, but Edward Scissorhands. There's never been a sequel. It's never been a reboot. The most that movie's ever gotten to a follow-up is Timothée Chalamet playing Edward Scissorhands in a Super Bowl commercial, which is pretty easy to avoid. And that thing just lives in this pure state where, there's no toxic Edward Scissorhands fan base. You know what I mean? There's not been an attempt to exploit that property. Fans haven't had to deal with different directors kind of passing around the artistic integrity of that movie like a football. So
should even Nightmare Before Christmas as well. I mean, we get a lot of corporate, we get a lot of product placement and toys and whatnot. But for the most part, I mean, it's just the movie. It's just that.
It's just the movie, but it's when you take that step into franchising something, which, hey, as somebody trying to work in this industry, that is the goal, right? You don't want to just have a hit. You want to have that franchise. That's what's gonna make everybody line up around the block to work with you. But what the fans have to deal with is how to stay emotionally engaged with something that is now being driven by profit and not by somebody's artistic, intention. It can overlap. Arguably, both of these franchises have had that situation. But look at this, right? Looking at Star Wars, the most artistic, or at least bold in its own way, movie of that franchise is what in recent years?
In recent years?
Yeah.
I mean, probably The Last Jedi.
Yeah. What's the most absolutely hated Star Wars movie?
It's definitely that movie.
That's slowly turning around. So people have been hating the one that came after it more, but the time when it came out, I literally got death threats because even though I don't like the movie now, I really liked it then. And
which movie? Which one?
Last Jedi. Yeah, Last Jedi.
Rise of Skywalker. Okay.
Well, Rise of Skywalker was the one that I think everybody kind of universally united on shitting all over. But when The Last Jedi came out, there were two sides of that. It was like a city split in half, and both sides were like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you if you don't think like I do." Literally, somebody threatened me with physical harm because I said, "Hey, that movie's pretty cool," and they told me I had no right to say that. And so Gabe's onto something where it creates this tribalism. When you create that in an environment where people are supposed to have fun discussing things and different opinions, that's what movies are all about.
No, movies are all about taking dead characters and de-aging them.
Yep.
That way you feel happy about yourself and the toys that you have.
Yeah. And
they have to be shot on a green screen in Atlanta. So
yes. But I guess speaking back on the Munsters here, I don't want to go too far off base.
How do we get back on this track?
I'll introduce something here because the complaints, Rob does get these complaints a lot, and if this movie would have gotten everything right, would have done everything perfectly, the Rob Zombie haters would still hate it. But one thing that I think is really interesting about this movie that I actually agree with this criticism is the feeling that some people have that this movie it feels a little rushed. It feels like we're just kind of going from scene to scene to scene to scene to scene. There's no time for really anything to breathe. I think some of this could potentially be contributed to the fact that Butch Patrick, who was the original Eddie Munster in the original series, he plays the voice of the robot man that marries Lillian Herman.
Which is amazing.
Yes, fantastic. They also brought back the original Marilyn, who is she's the voiceover for Air Transylvania. But according to Butch Patrick, this movie was almost 3 hours in its original iteration, and they sliced this down to 110 minutes, I think.
It was a quick watch.
Yeah, it's a very quick watch. Some people say it's excruciatingly long. I don't feel that. For me, it's done before I know it. I know I saw a YouTuber, I can't remember who it was, but they said they paused it thinking they were just like 20 minutes into the movie, and they were actually like 80 minutes into the movie. It's kind of how I felt first time I watched this. I want to throw this back to you guys here, and I'm going to start with you here, Tony. Do you feel like this movie has a feeling that it was rushed along, that we don't have time to let things sort of simmer, or do you think this does feel pretty cohesive for a movie that was cut down from such a long length?
Yes and no. I feel like this is where like most of my problems start with the movie, is like really that second half. I feel like the second half, not even so much that, it's the second act where it starts to feel like a slog. And to me, not so much that it's rushed, it's that I don't get a sense of I guess what's happening on screen besides, the immediate sets and the characters. It feels kind of dead. Like it's kind of like dead air in a way. It's hard to explain, but I don't know. I feel like that's where I feel most of the budget constraints, is that the background actors and like not having Mockingbird Lane until like the last 5 minutes of the movie. That's really all I could think of, and not so much that it's like rushed or like the budget kind of makes it feel like it's rushed. It's really just the fact that the movie starts slowing down in that second half for me. So like I don't know, I don't really see the whole it feels rushed angle. It definitely, for 110 minutes, it feels long. I think it feels a little longer. I feel like around the 85-minute mark, I'm like, all right, we're wrapping things up. It's like, oh shit, there's like another 30 minutes left in this. All right, that's fine. But no, I don't see that point of view.
Oh, well, other Gabe, it seemed like you sort of also agreed with my perspective there, that this movie kind of flies by for you. Do you think that this movie feels rushed at all?
Knowing the way like how Rob Zombie like does things, I feel like he had a 3-hour movie, like you guys are saying, and then Netflix or Universal just like, let's cut this down, because it feels like there's another movie that we might have missed within the movie. The way things are cut, the way things transition, like Tony said, like it feels like the last 10 minutes, like they get themselves on, they get in the airplane and they're in California, and all of a sudden it's like the movie's done. It's like,
yeah.
Like why? Like I wanted like a longer piece of that. Other than that, like I said, I just feel like it feels a little bit short.
And Gabe, from Not That Bad, is this a sentiment that you share? Are you in that? What camp do you fall into here?
This honestly feels like binging a couple episodes of The Munsters, just in terms of structure, in terms of flow. It is very vignette-y. Which is something that has always kind of dogged Rob's writing. I mean, he's a great concept guy. He comes up with ideas. I think it's true for his horror movies, and it's true for his sense of humor. I think he can come up with really funny ideas to center a scene around, or at least a great punchline to a scene. But it's not surprising to hear that this was truncated from a longer version. then again, that screenwriters just typically have to go through that process, especially when they're dealing with a project like this that has a whole world to it that you need to design and that you need to immerse the audience in. So it's not in any way a disaster. It's maybe a mark against the movie. If you want to grade it like a piece of homework, you could give it a demerit. I appreciated the brevity of it, even though 110 seems like a long time for a Munsters movie. It is easily one of the shorter movies you can go to see right now. I mean, for it to not break 2 hours, it's becoming increasingly rare for whatever reason. I'm grateful that this wasn't past 2.5 hours, which, depending on what the vision was, it could be interesting to see. I don't know. I would rather see 2 Munsters movies than 2 Dune movies, but that's just me. That's just this guy.
Would they release a director's cut, 3-hour cut?
I have heard they're not going to do that. I've heard there's they're saying there's not enough interest. I say do what some of these on Max. They'll throw the director's cut as an additional little section you can go to for the movie. Like the Hollow Man we covered with Cody Leach, and I noticed that they had it for that. I just throw it on Netflix with this movie, just let us go to the movie, and then underneath put extended cut, and let people watch it if they want to. That can't cost that much more to put that up. But at the same token, even as a Munsters fan, who does a 3-hour Munsters movie appeal to? I have a hard time answering that question, other than just myself. It's hard to say who that would appeal to.
I would watch it because it's a Rob Zombie movie.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, us fans would absolutely watch that. But judging by Tony's face, I think
I've heard this man complain about 3-hour movies so much. The fact that he's sitting here saying he'll watch a 3-hour assembly cut, because it was probably an assembly cut that this dude kept telling people's a 3-hour director's cut. So Gabe, you can watch the 3-hour assembly cut. When
have I ever complained about a 3-hour movie?
I've heard 3 hours, black and white, old. I've heard
not at all.
I'm broken. Mentally, I'm just I don't know what to expect out of you. What you say.
Well, if Christopher Nolan can make a 3-hour movie about Oppenheimer, if I'm pronouncing that right, I think Rob Zombie should be given carte blanche to make a 3-hour Munsters
love story.
Listen, Tony likes to complain about me, but I went to go see Avatar 3 times. That was a 3-hour movie. I saw that 3 times at the theater. I saw Oppenheimer just because I was like, oh my god, this new Scorsese movie is 3.5 hours long.
I didn't even mention that.
But I know that's where you were going.
Scorsese.
I know that's where you were going.
I
already know you.
Nope.
I know you already.
I didn't. I mentioned. You know what? We'll save it for another time.
This is not the time. We shouldn't be arguing on their show.
No, I don't want.
That's why we bring you guys on this show.
We welcome it. Yeah, we welcome it.
Killers of the Flower Moon is only 10 minutes longer than Avatar. It's only 10 minutes longer. You can't sit there for an extra 10 minutes.
Oh my god!
That's all I got to say.
Well, oh god. Well, Gabe from Not That Bad did bring up an interesting point. Just very briefly talking about the writing for this movie. I think it is sort of one of the elephants in the room. There's a lot in here. It's hard to move around, but the writing is something that's always going to come up when you got a Rob Zombie movie. And I can't say that those complaints are not always justified. I mean, I have gone on record in saying that I am not really a fan. I'm not as big of a fan of his first Halloween as I am his second. I think when he does something like Lords of Salem, where it's much more grounded and it's much less loud and crazy, I think that's where he's sort of at his best. But this is a movie that a lot of people had hope for. They were really hoping that this would be the movie that showcased his strengths as a writer if he had them. And I want to throw it to the least Rob Zombie fan of all of us in Tony, because I do know that of all of us, you are the least big fan of Rob.
Yes.
So how did you feel he handled the writing in this movie? It was a solo effort. Obviously story and dialogue can be very different when you break them down, but overall, how do you think he did? If you were giving him, if you were a critic?
I feel like when it comes to movies, I always struggle with this because with writing, it's so hard to judge something because I don't have the script. I can't see the script.
Right.
But what's translated, I guess, with the structure of what he goes for, I think that's where my biggest issues come from. Is that I'm not a fan of them just like rebuilding Mockingbird Lane and only using it for like 3 minutes out of the movie.
Right.
I would have preferred I love the fish out of water elements of putting the monsters from where they are and then throwing them in California. I wish I had more of that, which is, I think, not even so much of a complaint as it is a preference, because I think everybody else likes that they stay in Transylvania for so long. But I think that's where my biggest elements is the pacing and the structure, and especially in that second act, I talked about it earlier, it really starts to become a slog for me up until they get on that plane and go to California. So in terms of his like writing strengths, I guess like story strengths, I don't think I see them too much here. I think the charm of this movie comes from the sets, the costume designs, and the performances, and less much his writing. So that's just my thoughts on that.
Fair assessment, I think.
Yeah.
Other Gabe, I want to throw it to you here, and it's still tripping me up. What are your thoughts on how he handles this project? Do you think it was a good showing?
For his writing, no. I really hate to agree with Tony here, but I have to agree with him on all his points. I don't think it's the greatest showcase of his writing. I think more than anything, what makes this movie are the set pieces, his love for it, and I feel like he gave the actors like a carte blanche to like really, do their characters up, maybe, ad lib a little bit of scenes or what have you, and then just move on from there. But I think Tony makes a great point where I think the best part of this movie was when they were that fish out of water on Mockingbird Lane, and I feel like that's where his writing could have been the strongest, but there's very little showcasing for it.
Also a fair assessment. It's kind of surprising to see you guys agree on that, and
I love
it. I love it. As much as I love the arguments, I love that.
To be fair, me and Gabe agree like 95% of the times when we watch a movie. Right. It's funny when we go.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Flopbuster is a great show.
Thing.
Exactly.
Siskel and Ebert agreed more than they disagreed.
Exactly.
Why did people tune in? Because of how much I love to see them fight. Yep. I don't know. I think I'm gonna go easier on Rob here because there are things I've always admired about his writing. And to say that I admire his writing might be misleading because I don't know if the text speaks for itself. But what I think he does well is give himself ammunition as a director, right? I think he creates, again, really great set pieces. I think he knows the basic concepts of a setup and a payoff. He has stories that at least follow through to a character arc or some kind of satisfying resolution. I really was okay with them only being in Mockingbird Lane for such a short period of the movie because I accepted it as an origin story. It was a similar function to Casino Royale. It's a very different example, but I accepted that he became the fully realized version of the character that we all knew by the last few minutes of that story. But the thing is, Rob loves the world of Transylvania here. He loves the world that he's created. He does not want to leave. And I feel like when he does have to leave, it's kind of like he's kicking and screaming. I think he manages to have some great fun when they get to California. That whole Halloween party, there's something really actually heartwarming about the entire way this movie wraps up. The Munsters have to realize that even though that they are not like their neighbors, what are they doing judging each other by judging other people by how they look? It's one of Sherry's stronger moments, one of her better acting moments, I would say, that I've seen from her, because it's something that Rob's never going to get credit for, but I think he has a real heartbeat throughout almost all of his movies. Ever since The Devil's Rejects, when I think he realized how much emotion and how much he could get us to care about these characters, I think ever since then he's really found something to nail me with, and The Munsters is no exception. The only exception, is Three from Hell, which it does tug at the heartstrings sometimes. That's because I'm already attached to the characters from Devil's Rejects.
Well, that's something that I think would be an interesting topic to cover here is the love and the heart and the care that was put into the making of this movie. And it's not just from Rob here. I mean, you can tell everybody cares about their role in this movie. Mm-hmm. You can tell everybody cares about what they have to do. You can tell that everybody has a heart when they're making this. Nobody's phoning it in. Nobody's just getting a paycheck. I don't even know that half of them got paid, to be honest with you. It's just an incredible movie to showcase like heart, and it doesn't just shine through there. I mean, it shines through in some of the dialogue that he has. I mean, this is a movie that I would be very comfortable with my children growing up watching this. There's nothing too strong. There's nothing too crazy. At the same note, there's a lot that I think I would be able to laugh with a child about. There's a lot that made me laugh now. So this movie just made me laugh and smile and feel everything that the filmmakers were doing. Tony, is that something that I know, parts of the movie did feel like it kind of dragged for you. I know parts maybe didn't connect with you as much. Did you feel any of that connection that I felt while watching this?
Like you could show this to a kid, like that kind of
just sort of like, do you feel the heart and the care that some of the people
100%.
putting into this?
I think that's like one of the biggest strengths of the movie is that Rob clearly loves the characters. He clearly loves making this. There's a huge amount of energy, especially in that first 30 or so minutes. And as much as I think that second half drags on a little bit, it carries through. It carries through in everything that he does with the material. And even Gabe and Connor, he makes a great point. And clearly he loves that Transylvania section of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's one of his strongest efforts by any means, but it's not the train wreck people try to make it out to be. It's a very harmless and silly holiday special with Rob just having fun with characters that he loves.
Other Gabe, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I feel like this is a great, like a lot of people on Facebook or on social media, they always ask, right? Like, oh, what's a good starter horror movie for my kids to get into?
Yeah.
Right. And one can think of like Casper.
The Devil's Rejects.
Right. Casper, right, from the 90s.
Yeah.
Tony praises this one, Hubie Halloween.
Hubie Halloween, it's a masterpiece.
The Ghostbusters series.
The Sandman himself.
Dude, he's got a thermos that does like all these neat tricks. It's like a grappling hook.
We could add the Munsters to that, like a great.
I'm going to sue Adam Sandler for emotional abuse one of these days.
Don't come for the Sandman. Do not come for the Sandman.
Hey, I just rewatched Pixels the other day.
I saw that last at like a drive-in, like back when it came out. I don't remember anything about that movie.
No, but I think we could add the Munsters as like a rotational movie to like get kids like getting started at horror. I
agree.
You have Frankenstein, you have vampires, you have all the horror elements without it being scary for kids. But at least they get started with like, hey, there is a Frankenstein movie. Let's check this out, or stuff like that. It's a great starter movie, and going forward, I think it will be included as one of those on rotation Halloween classics.
Right. I think what is great about this movie is that it's going to show you the fun side of spookiness. It's going to take the visual language of a spooky movie, and it's going to show you, the humor of it, the colorfulness of it, and this, more than any of his other movies, really embraces something that I think he's always been very passionate about, which is like outsider cinema, making movies about people that are not like you and me, but actually, God damn it, they love each other, or they're a family, or stuff that sounds probably worse on paper than I think it actually comes out to in the movie, because he is actually working with material and with actors that he has such a genuine connection with. I think the thing about like a Fast and the Furious situation is I'm tired of them throwing around the word like family when how many people are in these movies? Like 30 of them? Am I supposed to believe that they all hang out after the shoots are done?
There's like 10.
They have like family barbecues. They drink Modelo's.
Yeah, no, Coronas.
The Coronas.
Two of the biggest names in the cast hate each other. Like, I've never seen one of these movies, and even I know that. So can we like stop with the family business?
I still can't believe
they're family again. All right, that's what happens with families. You argue, but then you come together. The Rock and Vin Diesel, they made up
families together again.
It's together again.
I've watched wrestling enough. That's a trick. He's gonna heel turn on him again and give him a rock bottom. I know it's coming. But like like you get that sense from Rob's movies. I think he's one of those guys that you get that feeling with, and like his connection with his cast more than any of the other people who make movies together. Maybe you can make an exception for like specifically Scorsese and like De Niro or maybe Quentin Tarantino and Samuel L. Jackson. Like maybe you can compare it to that, but Rob feels that way with like all of his recurring people. They all feel like his family. It's
very different to me than Tarantino and Samuel L. Jackson, because Tarantino clearly worships the ground that Samuel L. Jackson walks on in
That's also fair.
In this, in the way that a white kid who worked at a video store in Los Angeles would idolize somebody with the swagger and charisma of Samuel L. Jackson. Something like that isn't the same thing as the camaraderie that Rob actually gets from his cast, where I think the respect is so mutual. And I don't know, even though he's clearly a fan of their work, that's why he's working with them. For some reason, it doesn't feel as much like a fanboy energy.
Agreed. No, it really does feel like everybody wants to be there, that he wants everybody there. You hear these stories of like sets where directors clash with their actors, and every time you see behind the scenes, it's like people just come up to Rob and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, cool, okay." Or he'll come to somebody and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this? How do you feel?" It's really cool to see somebody have that sort of camaraderie, and it just feels natural for these people to be in the movie. And we talked earlier about how fans feel about that, but it helps with like when you watch a movie like this that's supposed to have a lot of heart to it. It adds to that. You feel like everybody involved is loving what they're doing and loving where they are. And when you make a low budget movie, that's not always the case, but it's the case here. Also, hello to Mia. Thank you for coming and hanging out and commenting. I want to ask, I guess anybody, what else do we want to throw out there as topics of conversation when it comes to Rob Zombie's The Munsters? I guess I'll start with Gabe from Not That Bad there.
Everybody's just waiting for Tony to go first.
Yeah.
Anytime we go silent, Tony, you're really falling, brother.
I'm holding my ground.
Ladies first.
No, but Gabe from Not That Bad. I want to start with you there. What is there anything else that you think we need to discuss while we are discussing the movie? And actually, Mia brings up a good point here. She says, "I'll forever say this: Rob is first a fan, second a director, which just adds that needed passion." And I think that perfectly captures what we've been talking about.
Yeah, the only movie that Rob's ever made that honestly didn't seem to come from the heart was 3 from Hell. That was a calculation first and foremost.
It felt like that, yeah.
Yeah. And I know
that, and I like that movie, by the way. I think it's fine, but I would agree. It lacks the heart that his other movies have.
I don't know if I can tell the temperature in the room, but I imagine that we can at least agree on that about 3 from Hell, not about The Munsters. A lot of people thought that he was coming into this for a cash grab. He didn't make Halloween to get the Halloween fans. You know what? Like Halloween came to him. When you actually hear about the development of that movie, the Weinsteins were desperate for somebody to do something with this dead franchise. It's the exact situation they are in right now, as they have bought the rights.
A Rob Zombie comeback?
On a side note, I wish I was in the room when Harvey Weinstein watched Halloween. I want to know what his reaction was. I feel like he would have had a stroke.
Well, I think there was one scene in the first Halloween director's cut that he particularly loved. I won't get into the details on that one, but I'll just say I do prefer the theatrical for the omission of that scene.
I call the director's cut the Harvey Weinstein cut.
Yeah, it feels like.
I heard Rob say a story where they were saying like this movie's dog shit, it's gonna fail. Harvey kept saying that, and then when the numbers came out and it was a hit, he goes, "Oh, I love this movie from the beginning. We want you to do a second."
Harvey's not the only producer in Hollywood guilty of that.
Yeah.
To be fair.
I mean, can you trust anybody with a name? Harvey,
it's funny though, because he's like one of the biggest known pieces of shit like ever.
Yeah. Now he is. It's just so weird. Like, go back to watch any Oscar acceptance speech, and it's like most of them they are because of Harvey, and these actresses and actors have to thank him. In their speech, and I wish they could wipe that away from the record, because nobody should feel indebted to that man. Just crazy to think that Rob Zombie's biggest brush with sort of Hollywood stardom, the Hollywood institution, was with the Weinsteins. Makes a lot of sense why he really took a different direction with his career. I don't know how to talk about this movie as anything but a Rob Zombie love letter to this time and culture that I love too. I can't assess this as a Munsters movie. It's probably not a great representation. I've seen enough episodes of the Munsters to know that. But do people really want that kind of I don't know, like a recycling of the Munsters? Do they want to see somebody do a Fred Gwynne impersonation? I mean, what do you guys think? I want to leave on this final note.
I get what you're saying, and I think I understand that it can come off like this is just recycled. They're doing an impression. To me, my favorite adaptations of old sitcoms is like, the Brady Bunch movie or the Addams Family movie, where it's like they're 100% doing the TV thing, but they're so straight at it that all the side characters and these people that are clearly of the time, very contemporary, it's that interaction that I loved the most out of those movies, especially the Brady Bunch movie. And I think that would have worked great here. Had Rob been playing with a $20 to $30 million budget, a theatrical release, and them in Mockingbird Lane, seeing how like modern neighbors and family members would have dealt with this. I also would have loved to have seen a Cousin Marilyn. Maybe that would have been Scout Taylor Compton. Somebody play that character. I would have loved that. So I think I probably would have been the audience in some way if there was I guess a bit more of a bit satire behind it, some kind of poking fun at that concept. I would have been more accepting of that for sure.
For sure. I think that this movie is a victim of being at a crossroads between two fan bases. You have the Rob Zombie fan base where they're expecting a Rob Zombie gore fest, a Rob Zombie, Rob Zombie at his Rob Zombiest. And then the other side is the Munsters fans that they're expecting a true to the origin Munsters movie. And I think that's where this movie suffers is Rob Zombie's trying to do his best version to please both fan bases. And it really, it hits the mark for me, but for a lot of people, it just misses that mark because it's not Rob Zombie, and it's also not Munsters. So it's just
that's a good way of putting it for sure.
It's just at that crossroads, and if you would have taken it one step further into Rob Zombie world, it would have been awesome for a lot of people. Or if you would have taken it to the other side, it would have been the greatest thing since sliced bread.
So
it's stuck in the middle.
Does that mean that he's kind of doomed in a way? Like, could he have made that Broad Street Bullies movie, or could he have made that Groucho Marx movie? Is he in a place in his career where he can still experiment and do different projects like this?
No.
Even I know, like, as a Rob fan and as somebody who doesn't have the same problems with his writing of dialogue and with his presentation and all of those things that people seem to hate about him. Even with that, like, I know he's capable of doing different things. I mean, he also, not many people know this, but he directed a comedy special. I believe the comedian is Tom Papa,
who has a cameo in Three from Hell.
Yes, he does have a cameo.
El Super Bisto.
Yes,
El Super Bisto.
Yes, and so he has the capability of doing something different and doing a departure, but I don't think Rob. This movie was one that I really hoped would put him back into good graces for people, because I really do think he's capable, and people laugh at me when I say this, but I really do think he's capable of making movies like A24 releases. Not in the same vein. He's not that elevated guy, but he's one of those guys that you could just throw a decent budget at, and he's going to give you a movie that's going to attract people to watch it and is going to make people talk.
Yeah, look at Lords of Salem, right? I mean, couldn't that fit in the A24?
Was that A24 or Blumhouse?
No, but that's Blumhouse. But imagine if that was A24, wouldn't it actually fit in surprisingly well?
I think it would, to an extent.
Blumhouse was like A24 before A24.
Well, that's another thing too.
Probably at that time. Yeah.
At that time. It was before they were super commercialized, and I don't know if A24 is ever going to experience that issue, but I think Rob would fit.
They're about to.
They're about to.
They're about to go commercial.
But
it was nice while it lasted.
There's a certain thing I feel like as a fan, right? Because like we'll even took music into it. Like I feel like you have to have these people, whether it be directors or actors, musical acts. Like yes, you get to know them and love them as one thing, right? And then they're stuck in that one thing because fans don't want to see them branch out and do something bigger or do something different. Me and Tony have talked about this, and I'll use him as an example. I feel one of Kevin Smith's like best movies is something out of left field, and that's the one with Ben Affleck, Jersey Girl. It has so much heart. That movie has so much heart, and it's different from everything else that Kevin Smith had made at that point. His fans trashed it, right? But the same thing with Rob. It's sort of like I feel like he needs to grow, and most horror fans are not letting him grow as a director. It's like he's stuck into like white trashy, House of a Thousand Corpses box, and like if he tries to grow out of it, everybody's trashing the movie.
Well, I think there's trouble. There's trouble too, because Rob, if there's one thing that he isn't, it's a comfortable filmmaker. Like he's not one that is going to make a movie to make you feel comfortable and to make you feel like you're getting exactly what you want from whatever it is that he's making. Like especially putting him in charge of anything that's an established property is going to be a cause for concern, because he's not that guy. Right. And that's not a bad thing, because people will grow to appreciate those things. People love Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 now. People are really coming around on that. And his first movie wasn't terribly, looked at when it first came out. It's definitely grown out of favor now. And as the director's cut became the most prominent one that people were watching. But
people have such a weird relationship with that in particular, his first Halloween. Like I don't think there's a consensus.
Not really.
I think it's a movie that has like that people have soured on because of that second movie. But now as people are starting to appreciate that second movie, I think some of that residual kind of favorability is maybe getting back to the first one. It's a weird movie to have in your filmography. And to this day, he says it's the most miserable production, or that and Halloween 2. It's the most miserable time he's ever had making a movie.
Yeah, and I think honestly, and it really pains me to say this, but I think he's at a point in his career still. I've seen one Rob Zombie film in theaters, and it was 3 from Hell. And I would have killed to see any of the other ones in theaters, especially as they came out. But I think we're at the point now where he may not get another opportunity to do that unless it's a Fathom event.
Can I say something, though? Because I feel like with Rob, I know he hates making those Halloween movies. I feel like had he just made that first one, I feel like the good grace of, this guy made a box office juggernaut that came and broke Labor Day records and all that stuff. Had he just made that first movie, I feel like a studio totally would have let him make Broad Street Bullies or the Groucho Marx biopic, I think he would have had enough juice in the tank to go on and do other things. And you brought up the Kevin Smith thing, Gabe. It's the same thing with Kevin Smith. Had he stopped Chasing Amy, I think it's a polarizing movie now, but at that time, Chasing Amy was pretty good for his career. Critics loved it. Roger Ebert said, "Oh, here's a guy that's got something to him, not just talking about boners and movies. There's a bit more there." Had he not, I love Dogma. I know you love Dogma. Had he not made Dogma and really taken a serious step in his career, I think a lot of more opportunities could have opened up for him. Same thing with Rob. I think had he just stopped at Halloween, I'm glad he's made all these other movies since, but had he stopped there and tried something else, I think a studio had 100% would have let him done it.
It's a really interesting theory. We'll never know.
We'll never know for sure. Yeah.
I mean, because I'm curious to know exactly what moves Rob was trying to make after that first Halloween, because the way he got roped into the second one was so weird, and I mean, he had to be lured out to do it by threat of the fact that they were going to do it anyways, and he just couldn't let somebody else come in and make their own. Ruin his vision was his words, and I know people clown on him for that, but there was a vision there that he wanted to protect, and I'm grateful we don't have just Brett Ratner's Halloween 2 or whoever the fuck the Weinsteins would have done.
Dude, it's those guys that made that piece of shit Leatherface movie, the direct TV movie or whatever it was. They would have been. They were locked. I remember reading that like everywhere that they were the pick. They were 100. And I think if you go to their Wikipedia, it's still on there that
for
they had a
Halloween 2.
Halloween 2, 100%.
The dude who did you're talking about the Texas Chainsaw 3D movie?
No, not that one. Leatherface.
Oh, the actual Leatherface.
The one with Steven Dorff. They were the guys that were hired to do Halloween 2.
Oof.
No thanks.
That's who the Weinsteins ran with. I think it's I'm trying to pull it up. Yeah, they were. I don't know where the change happened, but I know in like February or December, Rob was like back on, and then they were quickly in production. But before that, they were on board to do Halloween 2. I think they had written a version of it too.
They were probably used as bait though to get Rob back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's been done before, and it will be done again in the future.
Yeah,
it's sad that Rob was a victim.
Hollywood, folks.
Yep. Sad that Rob had to fall into that. Maybe his career would have turned out differently. I'm hoping the best for him. I hope a studio one day just kind of sees what he's capable of, especially if you put him behind the camera of a script that somebody else writes. I think you could really get something absolutely incredible from him. And I mean like that not only that, people like Gabe and I would say, Halloween 2 is a masterpiece in some ways, or that he has a masterpiece already made. I think more people would consider a film that he makes a masterpiece if somebody else wrote it. And I think if the studio takes that chance on him, the opinion will start to change, but I don't see that happening. And that's really sad. But
let me tell you something. I would be kind of sad not to see written and directed by Rob Zombie on that screen.
That's fair.
I will take the good and the bad. There's something though about the fact that I'm sitting down for not just a movie by Rob Zombie. It's an entire this multimedia piece of work that is going to immerse me, just like going to one of his shows. It is his brainchild, and I will take the good with the bad. I'm in the minority there, and I'm not saying you're probably right in terms of his career, but I think that's the same way he thinks. And that's why he hasn't really tried to work with other screenwriters. It's his baby.
I mean, it's a totally immersive experience when it's written and directed by Rob Zombie, because you get the movie, you get the soundtrack, you get the solo album, and then you get the tour. For it. Now, you guys mentioned Eli Roth. Oh, I feel like Rob Zombie has more bangers than he does. Like,
100%.
Oh my God!
As much as people want to like trash on Rob Zombie, right? You could say this guy Rob has done 3 like hardcore, like amazing horror movies in his collection that not a lot of horror directors could say, right? Devil's Rejects, Lords of Salem, the Halloween movies. I mean, he has hits in his repertoire that not a lot of other horror directors could count on.
Eli Roth has
trash on them.
Your average person can name 2 Eli Roth movies.
The House with the Clock in its walls. maybe Rob has to do a $40 million Amblin movie with Jack Black, and there you go. Back in.
That and his big hit that let him do that movie, which was Death Wish.
I worked on that movie.
Oh my God! Did he do Hostel? Was that his?
Did he do Hostel? Yes, he did Hostel.
He did Hostel. Yeah.
His claim to fame, he did Hostel.
Okay. Death Wish was fun, man. They fed us a lot on that movie.
Yeah, they did
a lot on that movie.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, but you could argue that without Rob, who's to say that he would have had a career, because people weren't investing in movies like that before House of a Thousand Corpses. I mean, even the Saw movies, the producers of Saw attributed that movie being greenlit because of the success of House of a Thousand Corpses. So,
yeah, and that's why you see a generational divide. I mean, like filmmakers, like genre filmmakers that are emerging from this generation have they admire him more, and you see the influence in his movies. Even people you wouldn't expect. Like, I think a lot of those elevated horror people, they dig Rob. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to talk like Rob's career is basically over. Like, I feel like this is this has got a bit of an in memoriam kind of vibe to it by this point. He's still got, every time I think he's down for the count, like, honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised if 3 from Hell was the last we ever saw from him in the world of film or television. But he proved me wrong, and he won me back. So let's do it, Rob.
Oh my God! Well, I think this is a good time as any to jump to our final verdicts. We will deliver our opinions on this movie, nail down our final thoughts, and we will, of course, give it a rating. If you're coming to this live or later for the first time, we do have 4 potential ratings that a movie could get on our scale. It's either that bad, it's not that bad, it's actually good, or it's actually great. With Rob Zombie's The Munsters sitting at a 2.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I'm going to start with our guests here, and due to tradition, I'm going to start with you, Tony. I would like to know, where would you put it on the scale, and do you want to drive anything home while you talk about it?
No, I feel like I hit all my points. I would say not that bad. I think it's a fun attempt from Rob Zombie, just not what I would want out of a Munsters movie. Yeah.
Very fair. Very, very fair. Other Gabe, want to jump to you here. Where would you put it? And anything else you want to drive home about your opinion?
I'm going to go with it's not that bad as well. I think it's a fun Halloween movie to watch with the kids. And sometimes that's all you need.
Perfect. Gabe from Not That Bad. Where are you sitting on this, buddy?
I mean, I know we didn't go much into our problems of the movie. It was mostly defense. I'm going to acknowledge that this is a flawed film. And I suppose I should win back the credibility of the audience somehow. I probably can't give every single one of his maligned movies an actually great, even though it's tempting. What I love about this movie is what it represents for Rob. It represents his ability to branch out. It represents the fact that he has more to him, and that his directorial skills are just as potent when he's working on a comedy as with a horror movie. And I want him to use this as the sign that he can break away, even though probably the reverse is true. Probably the backlash against it might discourage that. I don't know. I'm really trying to weigh things fairly here, but I have a lot of affection for this movie for personal reasons and critical reasons. So flaws notwithstanding, this is actually good, baby. This is an actually good time.
There we go. All right. I'm glad to hear it. I thought I was going to be the only crazy one here. Look, this is a live action cartoon of the Munsters from the twisted mind of Rob Zombie. Somehow somehow he squeezes out a film that's appropriate for children, but is plenty of fun to be had between adults, sober or not. This is just a good time from start to finish for most. I think this has the most appeal to really start people. I think other Gabe really hit the nail on the head in saying that this is a great starter movie for kids who eventually will get into horror. It's a great introduction to the macabre, and I'm gonna say this is actually good. I enjoy the hell out of this, and this is a yearly watch now. From last year onward, during my spooky season binge of films. So very happy that I'm not the only crazy one. But interesting that the Not That Bad team and the Flopbuster team are both on the same page with each other. This is pretty cool. Didn't expect this from our first live stream with all four of us, but this is awesome. And with that, I want to thank everybody who's currently here for sticking with us for these 2+ hours of talking about a Rob Zombie movie. This has been a blast for us. I want to throw it to you guys over on the Flopbuster side. What do you got going on in your world? And tell the people what they can be expecting from Flopbuster in the near future.
So we're going back to the regular show. We're going to break down, news, box office, and then review movies as they come, spoiler talk. There's not much going on in the world of news, obviously, because of the whole SAG strike happening. But in the meantime, until we can get back to that, we're on Sundays. We're going to keep that date. And we're just going to do watch-alongs, and I don't know, we'll figure out topics. But until we we're going to get back to the way we were doing things before, which was much more organized. And then we're going to talk about an amazing adaptation, the Flintstones movie.
I saw that was coming, and I'm so excited for that.
I'm surprised that you didn't nominate that for our show. I think that was something you were thinking about bringing to That Bad.
It was on my list. Yeah. I didn't have a chance. I would have a pretty good defense. I love a Hanna-Barbera. So
I'm so glad you didn't say the Buttercreamers.
Oh boy. Well, folks, if you enjoyed Flopbuster on the show today or any of their various appearances before in our history, they've been here with us since the beginning of the show, Tony being our first guest and Gabe being our second guest. So very cool for them to be here. Thank you guys for being here tonight. As far as Not That Bad goes, we do have an episode coming out this Thursday. We are a couple of days away, and I believe we have a little trailer this time for that episode. So give a look at that, and then we'll close out the show. Here we go. Folks, Not That Bad is finally able to cover one of the most contested horror sequels of all time. It was previously unattainable, a 3.0 on Letterboxd, and just within the last month has dropped to a 2.9. Season of the Witch is coming to Not That Bad this Thursday. We are beyond excited to cover this movie. We had a great time recording the episode. Gabe, for anybody who might want to check us out on a deeper level, where else can they find us and what else can they see from us?
On a deeper level, I mean, there's really nothing more I like to do than go to a nice coffee shop, local, of course, no corporations, and let's get some iced coffee, sit across the table, and just really, get to know one another. But if you're just a fan of the show, at least, then you can find us on social media. We're on Twitter. That's right, not X. Twitter.com, on Instagram, and on Facebook. You can listen to our show and watch our show, depending on the platform you're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. I'm sure Elon Musk will start a podcast soon, and we'll be on there too. And YouTube. Bada bing, bada boom. I don't know what else to say.
I can jump in.
Take it over, man.
Well, jumping on what Gabe just said there, if we didn't whore ourselves out enough there, you can head on over to notthatbadpod.com. You see the graphic in the bottom right corner of the screen. You can check out anything from links to all of our prior episodes, links to our Patreon, where we have monthly specials, a bunch of cool tiers. Subscribe at any of them to get any of the cool stuff that we do over there, if you'd like to support the show that way. If not, though, we just appreciate a like, a comment, a share, whatever helps spread the show, spread the word, is helpful for us. So without further ado, I think that covers it for today. Tony and Gabe, thank you again for joining us for another fun episode. First time we were all able to get together on the Not That Bad platform. And Gabe from Not That Bad, why don't you sign us out, buddy?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. As we talked about Rob Zombie's The Munsters for 2 hours, longer than the actual movie. Yeah. Oh my God. Why do we keep doing this? And why do people hang around? I'm Gabe.
I'm Connor.
And this is Not That Bad saying, did you hear about the business that was selling glass coffins?
Oh, geez. I'm cutting us off. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for watching, and have a great evening. Woo!
It remains